Stanley Milgram's life is a fascinating case study in the darker corners of human nature. His infamous obedience experiments revealed the shocking truth about our capacity for cruelty when following orders. Get ready to enter the mind of the man who dared to ask, "How far would you go?" As we delve into the life of Stanley Milgram, it's essential to explore the formative experiences that shaped his fascination with human behavior. Born on August 15, 1933 in the Bronx, New York, Milgram grew up in a Jewish family with roots in Eastern Europe. His childhood was marked by a strong emphasis on education and social justice, values that would later influence his work. Milgram's parents, Samuel and Maya, encouraged his curiosity and nurtured his love for learning, laying the foundation for his future academic pursuits. Milgram's educational journey began at James Monroe High School, where he excelled academically and developed a keen interest in social sciences. He went on to attend Queens College, City University of New York, where he studied political science and sociology. It was during this period that Milgram became increasingly drawn to psychology, particularly the works of Solomon Asch, who would later become his mentor. Asch's research on conformity and social influence had a profound impact on Milgram, shaping his understanding of human behavior and inspiring him to explore the complexities of obedience. Under Asch's guidance, Milgram began to develop his theoretical framework, which would eventually lead to his groundbreaking obedience experiments. He became fascinated with the concept of social psychology, recognizing that human behavior is often shaped by situational factors rather than inherent personality traits. This idea would become a cornerstone of his work as he sought to understand how ordinary individuals could be persuaded to engage in extraordinary and sometimes horrific actions. As Milgram's academic career progressed, he moved on to Harvard University, where he earned his doctorate in social psychology. It was during this time that he began to formulate his ideas about obedience, drawing inspiration from historical events such as the Holocaust. Milgram's experiences as a Jew, coupled with his interest in social justice, drove him to investigate the psychological mechanisms underlying human cruelty. He became determined to uncover the factors that contribute to our willingness to follow orders, even when they conflict with our moral values. As Milgram delved deeper into his research on obedience, he began to formulate a theoretical framework that would explain why ordinary individuals could be persuaded to engage in extraordinary actions. He drew inspiration from various fields, including sociology, anthropology, and philosophy, recognizing that human behavior is often shaped by a complex interplay of factors. One of the key concepts that emerged from his work was the idea of agentic state theory, which posits that individuals can enter a state of heightened obedience when they perceive themselves as acting on behalf of an authority figure. This concept was heavily influenced by Milgram's mentor, Solomon Asch, who had conducted seminal research on conformity and social influence. Asch's work had shown that individuals are more likely to conform to a group norm when they are faced with a unanimous majority, even if it means going against their own judgment. Milgram built upon this idea, recognizing that the presence of an authority figure can further exacerbate this tendency towards conformity. He argued that when individuals are given orders by someone they perceive as legitimate and powerful, they can enter a state of agentic shift, where they surrender their personal autonomy and moral agency to the authority figure. To test this theory, Milgram designed his now infamous obedience experiments, which were conducted at Yale University in the early 1960s. The experiments involved recruiting participants who were told they would be taking part in a study on learning and memory. However, unbeknownst to them, the true purpose of the experiment was to examine their willingness to obey orders that conflicted with their moral values. Participants were paired with a Confederate, who posed as another participant and were instructed by an authority figure to administer increasingly severe electric shocks to the Confederate each time they answered a question incorrectly. What's striking about these experiments is not just the sheer number of participants who were willing to administer lethal doses of electricity, but also the fact that many of them exhibited extreme distress and anxiety while doing so. Some participants even reported feeling a sense of dissociation from their actions, as if they were observing themselves from outside their bodies. This phenomenon speaks to the complex interplay between cognitive, emotional, and social factors that underlie human behavior, and highlights the need for a nuanced understanding of the psychological mechanisms that drive our actions. As Milgram's obedience experiments gained widespread attention, he began to receive both accolades and criticisms from his peers. Some hailed him as a pioneer in the field of social psychology, while others questioned the ethics of his methods. The controversy surrounding his work was further fueled by the fact that many participants had experienced significant distress during the experiment, with some even reporting symptoms of anxiety and depression afterwards. Despite these challenges, Milgram remained committed to his research, believing that it was essential to understanding the darker aspects of human nature. He continued to explore the concept of obedience, recognizing that it was not just a product of individual personality traits, but also of situational factors. In his book, Obedience to Authority, Milgram argued that the tendency to obey orders is deeply ingrained in human culture, and that it can lead individuals to engage in behaviors that they would otherwise consider morally reprehensible. One of the key insights that emerged from Milgram's work was the idea that obedience is often a result of a complex interplay between cognitive, emotional, and social factors. He recognized that individuals are more likely to obey orders when they are given by someone they perceive as legitimate and powerful, and that this tendency can be exacerbated by factors such as fear, anxiety, and social pressure. Milgram's work also highlighted the importance of considering the role of authority figures in shaping human behavior, and the ways in which they can influence individuals to engage in actions that conflict with their moral values. As Milgram delved deeper into his research, he began to explore the implications of his findings for our understanding of human behavior in a variety of contexts. He recognized that the tendency to obey orders is not unique to laboratory experiments, but rather is a pervasive aspect of human culture. In exploring these themes, Milgram drew on a wide range of disciplines, including sociology, anthropology, and philosophy. He was particularly influenced by the work of sociologist Herbert Kellman, who had written extensively on the role of authority figures in shaping human behavior. Milgram also engaged with the ideas of philosopher Hannah Arendt, who had argued that the banality of evil is often a result of individuals' tendency to obey orders without questioning their moral implications. As Milgram's work on obedience continued to gain attention, he became increasingly interested in exploring the broader implications of his findings for our understanding of human behavior. He began to examine how the tendency to obey orders is influenced by factors such as social norms, cultural values, and institutional pressures. This led him to investigate the role of authority figures in shaping human behavior and the ways in which they can influence individuals to engage in actions that conflict with their moral values. One of the key insights that emerged from this line of inquiry was the concept of agentic state theory, which Milgram developed to explain how individuals can become so deeply embedded in a social role or institutional context that they lose sight of their own moral agency. According to this theory, when individuals are placed in a situation where they are expected to follow orders, they often enter a state of heightened suggestibility and reduced critical thinking, which can lead them to engage in behaviors that they would otherwise consider unacceptable. Milgram's exploration of agentic state theory was influenced by his conversations with sociologist Philip Zimbardo, who had been conducting his own research on the psychology of imprisonment. The two men shared a fascination with the ways in which social contexts can shape human behavior, and they often discussed their findings and ideas with each other. This exchange of ideas had a profound impact on Milgram's thinking and helped him to refine his theory of obedience. As Milgram delved deeper into the complexities of human behavior, he also began to explore the role of individual differences in shaping responses to authority. He recognized that some people are more prone to obedience than others, and that this tendency can be influenced by a range of factors, including personality traits, cognitive styles, and emotional dispositions. This led him to investigate the relationship between obedience and other psychological constructs, such as conformity, compliance, and moral development. Through his research on individual differences, Milgram became interested in the concept of locus of control, which refers to the extent to which individuals believe that their actions are controlled by internal or external factors. He found that people with an internal locus of control tend to be less obedient than those with an external locus of control, as they are more likely to question authority and challenge social norms. This discovery had significant implications for our understanding of human behavior and highlighted the importance of considering individual differences in any analysis of obedience. Milgram's work on obedience also led him to reflect on the broader cultural and historical context in which human behavior takes place. He recognized that the tendency to obey orders is often shaped by societal norms, cultural values, and institutional pressures, and that these factors can vary significantly across different cultures and historical periods. This led him to explore the relationship between obedience and social change, and to consider how individuals can work to create a more just and equitable society by challenging unjust authority and promoting moral responsibility. As Milgram's work on obedience continued to unfold, he became increasingly fascinated by the ways in which social environments shape human behavior. This interest led him to explore the concept of situationalism, which posits that an individual's actions are largely determined by the situation they find themselves in, rather than by their inherent personality traits or characteristics. Milgram saw situationalism as a key factor in understanding why ordinary people might engage in extraordinary acts of cruelty or obedience, and he began to investigate how different social contexts could influence human behavior. One of the most significant influences on Milgram's thinking during this period was his relationship with psychologist Philip Zimbardo, who had been conducting his own research on the psychology of imprisonment. Zimbardo's famous Stanford prison experiment, in which healthy college students were assigned roles as either prisoners or guards and quickly became embroiled in a simulated prison environment, had a profound impact on Milgram's thinking about situationalism. Milgram was also influenced by the work of sociologist Erving Goffman, who had written extensively on the ways in which social institutions shape human behavior. Goffman's concept of total institutions, which refers to environments such as prisons, mental hospitals, and military barracks that exert total control over an individual's life, resonated deeply with Milgram's own research on obedience. Milgram saw total institutions as prime examples of situationalism in action, where individuals are stripped of their autonomy and forced to conform to the norms and expectations of the institution. As Milgram delved deeper into the world of situationalism, he began to explore the ways in which different social environments can influence human behavior. He became particularly interested in the concept of de-individuation, which refers to the process by which individuals lose their sense of self and become anonymous in a crowd or group setting. Milgram saw de-individuation as a key factor in understanding why people might engage in behaviors that they would otherwise consider unacceptable, such as rioting or looting. Milgram's research on de-individuation led him to conduct a series of experiments on the effects of anonymity on human behavior. In one famous study, Milgram had participants wear hoods and masks to conceal their identities, and then asked them to administer electric shocks to another person who was actually an actor. The results were striking. When participants were anonymous, they were significantly more likely to administer higher levels of shock than when they were identifiable. This study provided powerful evidence for the role of de-individuation in shaping human behavior, and it had significant implications for our understanding of group dynamics and social influence. Stanley Milgram's groundbreaking work on obedience has left an indelible mark on the field of psychology, forcing us to confront the darker aspects of human nature and the power of situational influences on our behavior. In the words of Milgram himself, the disappearance of a sense of responsibility is the most far-reaching consequence of submission to authority, a poignant reminder of the importance of individual autonomy and moral courage. That's all for today's Psych with Sigmund. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, may your ego find balance between pleasure and reality.